Welcome back, UCLA Bruins. It's the High School Spotlight Live signing day special. Welcoming Mr. Guerrero, welcoming Jim Mora Jr., the new coach at UCLA. What does UCLA have returning?
Well, some of the guys are bringing back. I think they're going to have to get the quarterback position settled now. Whether it's Breho, Kevin Prince, Hundley, I think it'll be one of those three guys. Even though they got a quarterback commitment, he might play another position. So we can talk a little bit more about Devin Fuller in a few minutes. But the quarterback position to me is one that has to get settled. And then we talked about what does he bring? What does Jim Mora bring? If nothing else, he brings excitement. And one of the things I love is he's a defensive mentality guy. I'm from the South. I grew up in the SEC. Best athletes play on defense. Anthony Barr is 6'4", 220 pounds, runs a 4.6. He's playing a Q-back or something silly at UCLA, touching the ball once or twice a game. One of the first things that Mora does and comes in and said, Anthony, why don't we sit down? I coach linebackers in the NFL. Why don't you come be a linebacker? And to me, that just warms my heart. I love hearing about the defense come in.
Do you think that's because he comes from the NFL and you know you got to win championships with defense? I mean, we saw Alabama and LSU and how dominant those defenses were.
Well, I think that's a big part of it. If someone like him with his resume comes in, he's been a head coach, he's been an assistant, he's been a coordinator in the NFL. If he comes in and says, I can make you into this guy, you got to listen, don't you?
Absolutely. Now we're going to look at UCLA's outlook coming into the 2012 season. 16 returning players, key returning players, and key losses. You see Nelson Rosario and Derek Coleman, those are big losses. But coming back, Kevin Prince, Jonathan Franklin, the running back, Dayton Jones, who did a nice job this year, and Patrick Larimore. Now, what do they have coming in? The first guy is a beast.
Well, you come in, and Ellis McCarthy is a guy that I was kind of hot and cold on through the year. He showed up at the Army game and had a different color jersey on with no name, and I was like, who is that guy down there killing everybody? And someone yelled back up, that's Ellis. I'm like, that's Ellis? So when he turns it on, he's as good as anybody in the country. 6'5", 310 pounds, 5 stars next to his name for a reason. We were talking about moving him down coming out of the Army game. We ended up moving him up.
Ishmael Adams.
Ishmael Adams, a corner from Oaks Christian, played a lot of running back this year, but he was probably the MVP of the West in the Army game. You see what he was able to do here coming back. So he was one of the few guys that wasn't committed already of the top guys that UCLA is bringing in, but he was a heavy Cowleen, so he was one of those guys also that came in with that defensive mentality. The two guys we bring right off the top are both defensive players, Ishmael Adams, Ellis McCarthy.
What a get for UCLA. Jordan Payton yesterday says he's going to Washington, but today he changes his mind. He's going to UCLA. Is that the definition of flipping? Because we hear it so much. I mean, this is what all these coaches are trying to do. They're trying to flip kids.
He's flipped so many times, it's almost not flipping anymore. It's like rolling dice. You know, put one on each side of the die and see what comes up. And I think he is one of the single most. If I'm trying to explain how crazy it was this year in the Pac-12, I'll just say to Jordan Payton, with all the coaching changes that went on, from the 4 head coaching changes to Tosh Lupai leaving Cal and going to Washington. It was crazy out here, and Jordan was a guy who was committed to USC, goes on national television, announces to Cal, goes on ESPNU yesterday and announces for Washington, and then signs with UCLA today. That's about as well as I can sum it up.
And Scott, the Twitter that you were reading at the bottom, that is from Jordan yesterday. I would like to say, go Dogs, Husky Nation.
Well, it's tough on these guys, and you know we've had a lot of players come in today, and I say yes, it's hard to tell these people no, and Jordan's obviously had trouble doing that, which I understand. I've never had to go through a process like they do, so I have a lot of sympathy for a player that's getting pulled in all these directions by these multi-million-dollar salesmen. I mean, these guys are good at what they do. So I got a lot of sympathy for a guy for these guys that are having trouble, especially when real quick, I talked with Brandon Beaver. We asked him, Brandon, how many of the coaches that first offered you scholarships are still there? He said, none. None.
None.
Crazy.
That many changes, especially in the Pac-12. Now, we're going to hear some comments from Jim Mora at his press conference.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank Dan Guerrero for providing the support and the resources to hire this amazing group of coaches that I was able to assemble that went out and put together a really good-looking recruiting class. There's 2 guys I want to recognize in particular, 2 guys that held this thing together through the transition in coaches. And when I walked into the office that first day, handed me a phone and said, start making calls. And that's our director of on-campus recruiting, Pat Girardi. Where's Pat? Right here. That guy. The coaches can cheer for him because they know what he did. And the other one is our recruiting intern, Matt Bernstein. Without those 2 guys right there, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we accomplished today. They were tireless workers, and they deserve a ton of credit for the success that we had today. Speaking of our staff, it's a great staff, and you know, they're well known as recruiters, but they're fine men and they're outstanding coaches, and we're looking forward to getting on the field with this new class that we've put together. I thought I knew what recruiting was, but I really didn't, and I leaned heavily on these guys here to guide me through it. It was a 5-week sprint for us, and we really attacked it hard, and I think it paid off with the guys we were able to sign today. Regarding the players that are currently on our roster, we're into the 2nd week of our off-season program, and I can tell you that I'm very impressed by the attitude and the work ethic, and I like what I see so far. A lot of hard work went into this year's class, and you know, we certainly could have conceded the 2012 class because we got such a late start and focused our energies on 2013, but we decided not to. We decided to attack it and try to take chunks out of it every day, and the culmination of that are the young men that we're presenting to you today. We signed players today from 10 states and 3 countries, believe it or not. So I can give you a rundown of those if you want, but we went to the United States, Canada, and we went as far as Russia to get a guy, okay? So we didn't actually send anyone to Russia. I didn't make a home visit in Russia, but we got a guy of Russian descent. Along the way, we've kept our focus towards the future, and we've evaluated over 300 class of 2013 prospects and offered over 50 of those young men at this point in time. So while we're excited about what we did today, we're certainly still looking towards the future. But it's this year's class that we're here to talk about. We think this is a talented group of young men who we're confident will represent UCLA in an outstanding manner both on and off the football field. We think each of these kids has the qualities that we value as a coaching staff. The things that we were looking for, obviously we were looking for talent and ability to play football. We were looking for football character, competitiveness, toughness, guys that were accountable, and guys that had a team-first mindset. And just to wrap it all up, we signed the class that we worked to sign. We signed the guys that we wanted to sign, and we're very happy about today's results. So I'll open it up to any questions.
UCLA, Coach Mora making a splash. How has he been able to do that?
Well, he's working hard, and he's bringing in some guys that know the area. He's coming from the pros, but he brings in a guy like Adrian Clem, who's recruiting 4-star talent from California to SMU. How much easier is it going to be to do at UCLA? There's a void there with USC being limited in scholarships and all the coaching changes that happened this year in the PAC. There was a void to be filled. Jim Mora has come in and filled it this year and brought UCLA really from the dead in the 50s. And I think what he's doing is seizing the opportunity with USC being limited on scholarships that Rick Neuheisel missed on.
All right, partner. Now we got some 4-star recruits that are going to UCLA. Let's talk about them now. Devin Fuller.
Well, this was one of the shocking ones to me. He's from New Jersey, so UCLA's brand still has a far-reaching effect, and we've got him the number 3 ranked quarterback in the country, and honestly, I thought he was a perfect fit for Reach Rodriguez's system at Arizona, so it surprised me when he chose UCLA. He is a good enough athlete to play another position with the Bruins, but if he's got a chance, he'll probably get a chance to play some quarterback, but he's good enough to play wide receiver or defensive back.
And Jeremy Castro, Vista Murrieta.
Tough. We want to talk about changing the mentality. He played defensive tackle for Vista Murrieta, who I had the number 1 team in the Southern section this year at 15-0 on the field, and he projects as a linebacker, but you got to be tough if you're going to be playing inside. You see him coming from a stand-up position there and splitting a double team and getting a sack. Just a monster guy. Another one of those guys that flipped. He was committed to Washington, then committed to Oregon, now committed to UCLA. Marcus Rios was committed to Boise State early, a 4-star, big, long cornerback prospect, about 6 feet tall. When he said he wanted to take some visits, Boise State said, well, you just keep on taking him. He really clicked with the coaching staff and chose UCLA. You might notice a pattern here. Another guy that was committed somewhere else that flipped, took advantage of what UCLA is now trying to bring to the table in recruiting and coaching.
And we also have some other guys from out of state that have also signed with UCLA.
Yes, we do. And we mentioned Devin Fuller right off the bat, and he to me, he's the crown jewel in that class for the out-of-state guys. And we said he could be a quarterback. That's where we have him listed because You know, I said about Denard Robinson, I've gotten tired of saying the guys that can't play quarterback then end up playing for them. But I think he's the crown jewel of the out-of-state guys.
Are you ready to switch gears and talk USC with John Jackson?
Always. It's always a good time to talk football.
Especially USC with John Jackson. He's been waiting all day. That's coming up right after the break.